This is Thought Leaders Chat with Ochieng Oloo, and today my guest is Dr. James Mwangi, the Group CEO of Equity Group. We're going to be talking about the banking sector, the performance of equity. We're going to look at the macroeconomic environment and also looking at the prospects for the future in terms of growth, not just for the bank, but also for the economy. Thank you. So, Dr. Mwangi, this year's theme for our banking project is on innovation and diversification and growth. And we chose this because we are trying to look forward in terms of what is the future of banking in this country, and not just here, but globally. So I'm going to start by focusing a bit more on innovation and simply ask a very basic question. To what extent would you say Equity Bank is using data in making decisions in terms of what actions the bank should take?
Thank you very much, Mr. Oloo, for having me on this conversation on thought leadership, and specifically talking about innovation, diversification, and growth of the banking industry. Equity, to a great extent, has been a creation of innovation. We have disrupted ourselves severally to become who we have become. And we have used thought leadership to drive innovation. We have been very fortunate that entrepreneurship spirit in this bank is abundant, both at the business unit level, at the board level, and at the managerial level. And we have seen that convergence of entrepreneurship and intellectual convergence, helping the bank to identify a sweet spot that has driven innovation. Looking back, over the last 30 years, we have moved from being number 66 out of 66, a technically insolvent building society, then called Equity Building Society, to becoming the largest bank in East and Central Africa. And that, to a great extent, has been because of innovation. Innovation starting with removing barriers to financial access and driving financial inclusion. And financial inclusion has now seen the country move from 4% inclusion to 87% inclusion over that period of 30 years. And in the process, Equity building a customer base of 18 million customers. And it's that customer base that has built an asset base of 1.5 trillion. Now, addressing the question of use of data, as Equity became innovative, it adopted digitization to bring ease and convenience. It also became a big player in the payment space with the introduction of the MVNO, Equitel as a channel, introduction of the PSP license to allow payments and money transfer, dominance in the diaspora space, controlling 60% of all flows from the diaspora into the country. And that then gave Equity very powerful layers of capturing data. And we used that data to start then informing our commercial division on product development. And as a result, the decisions that we make in product development is informed a lot by that data. The channels on which we collect data is the payment channels. 97% of all our transactions are now on digital platforms, and that is the biggest source of data. The second one is digitization of the retail commerce. We now have almost 1 million pay with equity merchants, and that has given us a lot of data on retail commerce patterns, how people spend their money, what they spend on their money, and as a result, that has given. The 18 million customer base gives us a lot of data on payments, whether it's processing farmers' payments, whether it's processing salaries. 18 million people give you a very huge database. And it's then this database that we have used to understand each customer, to score each customer. Each equity customer has a credit score based on the data that we have built on them. We build data from 3 facets: payment space, savings experience, and credit history. So it's a very rich data. And essentially now we are enhancing that with the social media data. So the channels of social media, we have now started making them transaction channels, whether it's the WhatsApp, whether it's Instagram, whether it's chit chats like Kiva. That has given us huge opportunity to track data, to get to know and understand our customers and their needs, and to be able to predict with precision their financial behavioral patterns.
Data is good, but data can also be bad. One, because it can overwhelm you. You can have so much data, but you have no capacity to analyze it and then to use it for what it is telling you. What would you say, because there's a concept called the data maturity. There's something called data maturity index. Would you say that Equity, in terms of how you use data and how you synthesize all that into the business, is now a data mature bank?
The data use index and profile is an evolving area. We're seeing that it's not just on how you capture data, how you store data, how you retrieve data, how you analyze data. That is an evolving area, being informed to a great extent by the 4 industrial technologies. Machine learning, robotics, artificial intelligence, analytics. And those tools, as they mature, help you to develop your capability. So I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, we might be around 4 because it's early days. Not of just the capabilities, early days in development of these tools. But this is the central focus of Equity. And we are optimistic in the next 3 years, we should be able to reach a 7 out of 10. We have focused a lot on data, as we said, for the payment. We have digitized cash. What we really need to do is now digitize our products. We're focused on micro, small, and medium loans. We need to digitize large corporate loans. We need to digitize LCs. We need to digitize services. So it is when you have fully digitized that, then you can say in the spectrum of data use, then you have matured. But I would say we are in the early phases of data development.
2 more issues that I want to raise on innovation and the data. The customer experience. Ultimately, all this innovation, all the analysis, all the data, artificial intelligence, and so on is meant to improve the customer experience. What did you say about the customer experience in Equity Bank right now compared to probably about, 5 years ago?
There has been a very significant change in customer experience in Equity over the last 4 years. We were very lucky that we were digital ready when COVID struck, and that COVID acted as a tailwind to adoption of digitization by our customers. What would have taken years to train, to develop, to persuade our customers to adopt digital platforms happened out of the need to comply with the COVID management protocols. And that then is how, from nowhere, we ended up with 97% of the transactions being on the digital platform. Now, that changed the experience of the customers dramatically. Over that period of 4 years, Equity has transformed from being the place you go to what you do on the devices. We have compressed both geography and time such that Equity Bank is accessible to our customers irrespective of where they are, irrespective of the time it is. It has become a 24-hour service. And a 24-hour service on your device have delivered unparalleled convenience to our customers. The ease of banking. And more importantly, the greatest benefit to the customers is that we have moved from intermediating for customers, taking from those who have excess and giving those who have deficits, to empowering lifestyle of our customers. Whatever they want to do, the bank enables them. Why? Because of the payment capability. As the environment digitizes, we then have complete lifestyle enablement. But the moment we see our customers are able to pay from the 1 million pay with equity merchants without needing cards. So they have gone to digital payments. They have gone into almost a cashless economy. Because they can pay their landlords, they can pay their barbers, they can pay for their grocery in the supermarkets, they can pay broadly now to the retail outlets. And that is the transformation we have seen happen to our customers. And lastly, is access. Banking has become extremely accessible to the customers, irrespective of time, irrespective of where they are, irrespective of the product. We have moved beyond cash to digitizing the products and services. And then we have globalized these using a global payment system. So we have moved them from the geographical space that they were used to. And that is what has given unparalleled ease and convenience to the customers.
You mentioned while releasing your 2022 financial results that you're actually investing in or improving your core banking platform. I know you haven't spoken about that much, but I just want, because I mean, with all the innovation that is happening and the technology that you're putting in and what you've already done, I mean, in the past, yeah? How is this going to change or improve the bank's ability to perform better?
We have realized that the volume of our transactions have gone up since the full digitization has gone almost 30 times fold. And broadly, customers who used to do 2 transactions, they're now doing an average of 22 transactions per month. Simply because of the convenience, because of digital payments, in support of lifestyle. Whatever they do, they can complete the transaction. They no longer need cash in their pocket. Whatever they are paying, they can pay with the digital payment. As a result, we have realized we have become a big processor. And banking systems were never being processor. They were store for value. And suddenly, now, the biggest function of banking is processing lifestyle transactions, which are coming through payments. So we are re-architecturing the entire system structure of the bank to accommodate a digital environment as opposed to an intermediation environment. So yes, we'll have core banking systems, but we'll have transaction processing systems independent of the banking systems, which were never designed to process high volume transactions. At the same time, we've realized that we have grown in size. We're now a 1.5 trillion balance sheet bank, 18 million customers, and nearly 10 million transactions per day. We range between 5 and 10 million transactions in a day. So that transaction capability, the speed of processing, and the interface of the systems with the industrial technologies like machine learning, so that you're able to really build your data capability, to build your analytics. You need systems that are compatible with machine learning, with robotics, artificial intelligence, and all that. And that is and analytics. So that is why we are investing afresh to create the capability of the future and to prepare for what we believe is the benefits of demographic dividend of a youthful population. This is a digital population. They're very familiar with devices. They are likely to interact with us from their mobile or computer devices. So we must have then the core systems to the bank, the back-end systems of the bank. The second thing is digitization. We are now over that phase. We believe that we have to be a digital bank, meaning that we have now become an online business. And becoming an online business, you require systems that have really capability to deal with these things like cyber risks and have the capability, inbuilt risk management capability. You need systems that are defensive and have the right firewall capabilities and have the right configurations in terms of risk management. So that is why we have decided to do it all over again as an online business. And also to prepare for growth. We see huge opportunity. Since the last 4 years, the balance sheet of equity has doubled from 650 billion to 1.5 trillion. And we see that momentum being sustained. As we saw, the balance sheet is on a run of 30% growth rate. So that capability means that in the next 2 years, most likely we'll be headed to a 2-3 trillion balance sheet. So you need to invest into that future so that you don't overrun the runway.
How long is it going to take to do this shift to the new platform, and what's the financial investment in it?
We think we'll complete the investment, the deployment, and the shifting this year. And customer, it's already started. We are changing every system, including the infrastructure and the applications and the core banking system. The second aspect of it is, and you alluded to it about what this conversation is, Equity Group has chosen to become a diversified financial group. We are now not only in banking, but also significantly big in insurance, big in foundation, and also big in technology businesses. So at the technology businesses, we have the MVNO providing us with telecom capabilities, Equitel. We have PSP license giving us capability to do money transfer and payments within the country and within the region. And we also have the APIs management capability where we can plug and play to the ecosystems that we bank and provide them banking as a service, insurance as a service. That is why it was necessary so that we can be one-stop shop for both banking, insurance, investment, banking, and technology services. That is what has informed the need to rethink so that the configuration, the architecture is of an expanded offering under the single equity brand, the one equity, where licenses goes to the bank, and at the front we are facing the customer with bundled offering.
Now, you led me to my next question, so I'll just go ahead with it. Now, if you look at the landscape of the banking industry in Kenya, clearly the most diversified bank, or let me say group, is Equity. A lot of people know Equity, the bank, but there's Equity Afya. There is the insurance company, the life insurance company. There is the foundation, which is doing quite a lot of work also within the society, and investment. Basically, in terms of diversification, if you're looking at the different business units, you're a very diversified bank. But not just that, even geographically, yeah. One of your aspirations is actually to become a Pan-African bank. So I want to talk about diversification a little more broadly. How does this fall into the game plan or the strategy of the bank? Yeah, why is it necessary, and why does that give you an edge, say, over other banks in the market?
We are good students of history, and our study of history has led us to conclude that we continue to see compression of margins. Banking has been commoditized, and as a result, it's not going to be a margin business, but a volume business. If you look, new regulation has allowed technology companies and fintechs to offer banking as a service without the cost of licenses. And we have seen the proliferation of digital lending and payment by fintechs. So as a result, we then needed to prudently reposition ourselves for the future. And it's on that basis we chose a twin diversification approach, one in offering of products or product diversification, and that's how we moved beyond the financial banking services to insurance, to investment, and to technology services, particularly in the payment space. Then we realized that might not be enough. We needed geographical diversification, and we took an initial step to be a regional player. And I'm glad to say, as a regional player, we are now a systemic bank within the region, largest bank in Kenya, largest bank in DRC, second largest bank in Rwanda, third largest bank in Uganda. So essentially what we are seeing is a diversification of that capability within a geography. So, and this has become the biggest risk mitigation and management ability. So we have diversified the sovereign risk, and we have diversified the sectoral risk. At the moment, the financial sector, the most affected arm is the banking arm because of interest rate, exchange rate, inflation, and liquidity. But you notice that the insurance business is studying more because it's not dependent on those prices. So essentially, you mitigate the cyclic nature of risks through diversification. You diversify sovereign risk and what one would call climatic also risk by being in different what one would call diversified ecological zones. So that is the whole essence of it, but it's also then to be able to settle the business model of the group to where it has always been, an inclusive model driven by affordability, and affordability is because of a high volume, low margin business model. That is what forced us to diversify on product and geography.
What next? Sitting here, you can't help but thinking, so what next is Equity going to be investing in? What are they looking at in terms of diversification? Not just regionally, but also in terms of the different sectors that you might be getting into.
Our shared prosperity model of leader incorporating host communities, have shown us that we need to address the challenges confronting communities as NANCA shareholder or a stakeholder, to use the right word. And that explains why scholarships and leadership development has become the biggest arm of the foundation. Today, we have 60,000 scholars who have gone through secondary education, with 40,000 scholars being in Form 1 to 4 as we speak. We have 861 scholars in the US on global scholarships, and we have 22,000 scholars in our universities. We are trying to develop leadership for communities. At the same time, we are providing solutions to the very needy but gifted children in the scholarship. And also, we are inspiring community to take care of its own. And we are very glad that Wings to Fly has become a major inspiration, such that beyond the MasterCard Foundation, we now have got the World Bank as our major partner. We have seen USAID, we have seen KFW, we have seen UK Aid, all coming together and saying, let's do this because you are doing better than anybody. The second area that we'll see greater expansion is on agriculture. We feel that the transformation of Africa will not happen unless we transform agriculture. So we have really focused to transformation of the small-scale farmers through productivity gains and transformation of agricultural practices to sustain that and to also adapt and mitigate against climate change. We have also seen youth are not heavily attracted to agriculture, and we have traced them to be excited about commerce, to be excited about trade, and as a result, we have taken entrepreneurship and financial literacy as a major focus in society so that we can support enterprise. And today, because of that bias, 72% of all our loans are to small, micro, and medium enterprises. And we take real pride, particularly in a program like Young Africa Works, which we started 3 years ago. We have trained 500,000 young people, given 380,000 213 billion shillings, established those 400,000 businesses, and employed 1.3 million fellow youth. That is where the focus is, to solve unemployment, to give opportunity to society. Essentially, we are investing to change lives, to uplift the dignity of the host community, and to expand opportunity for such community. And that is where people will see. And that explains why equity has moved into health. We have realized 40% of the default that occur in our loan offering is when a health incident afflicts a family. And so we have said the pain that families go through, the diversion of business funds to address the health of a member, we could take it away. But as we tried to do health insurance, we realized the supply side was not competent. So we called on our scholars who had done medicine, and we formed a health franchise for them, Equity Afia, or Equity Health Centers. And today we have 81 hospitals, which are owned and managed by our scholars who did medicine. And last year alone, they saw 1.5 million patients. So we are seeing we are now creating a systemic health system that is driven by quality, reliability, and affordability, and is going to disrupt the health sector as we know it in the country. And lastly is the focus to climate and environment. We have realized we must invest as a corporate that has taken strong leadership. We felt it was important for us to provide leadership in climate change, and environment to help small-scale farmers to adapt and to mitigate the negative impact, to help forestall the dramatic change in climate change through afforestation. We've set ourselves a target of 35 million trees to be planted. We have already planted 21.8 in 3 years. So in 5 years, we'll complete our target. We are focused on greening domestic and household energy systems. We have given about 600,000 clean energy devices to households so that they can. And now we have taken the very ambitious program of transforming all school, hospital, and university and college kitchens that have been using firewood as a source of energy, and we are transitioning them to LPG. And that alone will help us save 12 million trees in a year that have been being cut by these over 10,000 boarding schools, universities, colleges, and universities. So it's a leadership position to solve society's problem. But this also has shown us the need to partner and collaborate. So we have also said nobody should be left behind. And we are now partnering with the UN agencies and the government in all the countries we are operating in to learn social safety nets to ensure the very underprivileged in society receives regular social payments to uplift them. And what we have done, using data, we are now able to give loans to refugees, loans to those socially supported by those social payments. And we are seeing them acquiring the first set of assets. So the DAB has become a very busy ecosystem for business between the host community and the refugees, simply because we have introduced them through biometric to work together to economic. So that is the social investment. So impact investment, because we know it's difficult times. And so society is going through difficult times. So we have said we'll use the infrastructure of banking, of insurance, to do good to society and to invest to impact transformation of society and to ease the pain that society has been going through.
Mm-hmm. These are difficult times, not just for your customers in Kenya. I think the global economy, as well as the regional economy, has taken quite a big hit. So I want us to talk a little bit about the macroeconomic environment. Before I do that, I want us to talk a lot more first about the bank's performance and the growth going forward. So let me start with your performance. You've grown a lot organically. You said as a small bank, in fact, up to now, you're not known to pick on some of the big ticket businesses in the market, like big government projects or so on and so on. Yeah. Now, yet you're one of the biggest banks in the market, if not the biggest. So I just want to find out, as a matter of strategy, going forward, how do you see yourself positioning this bank, yeah, as a top bank in the market? Is it going to be always organic growth, or what is it going to be? What is a model that we can look forward to?
The model that we have developed for Equity Group is a twin engine model where we have a corporate, an economic engine and a social engine. And the social engine gives the benefits and return to community, host community. We recognize that to be the greatest. While the economic engine provides for the profit, scale, and sustainability. So that's how we have linked the two models. But we have also ensured the model is an inclusive model. Nobody is left behind, from the refugees to the social payment beneficiaries to who have been in the past been condemned as unbankable. They are in this bank. As you graduate and grow, you remain in this bank. So we start with those who are served at the agency level, We come to those who are on self-service platform on their devices. Then we come to the retail banking. We come to the corporate banking. We come to the supreme and private banking eventually for high net worth, including investment banking services. So we have that whole spectrum to accommodate inclusion. And we have made inclusion possible by focusing on high volume, low margin business model. And as we see that is what has allowed equity to have exponential growth, which we have sustained a compounded growth rate of 156% over a period of 30 years. And that growth is simply because you recruit at the very bottom, and then you keep on graduating customers. You don't compete with other banks. And
per year, and
compounded growth rate over 30 years. So it's annual growth rate, but compounded for 30. That's how we have moved from a 22 million balance sheet to a 1.5 trillion balance sheet. If you try to divide that, that is how you arrive at that number. And we saw what the gap was. Banking was only for 4%. 96 were excluded. So we decided strategically and intentionally and deliberately to focus on the excluded. And that is why our mantra is about financial inclusion. And it's not by default that we focus on the private sector, on the individual, on the consumer, on the micro enterprises, the two aspects of it, individual and enterprise. But it was because that's where we could have made a big difference. And that's where we had to be innovative because there was nobody. And we had to solve the problems that kept people away from banking or made people unbankable. So that explains why the focus on the private sector. It has served us well. We see our services appreciated. We see a growth space. So we'll continue to focus on that and allow the government banks and the international banks to also play their role part where they are strong and good at. But we find supporting communities, supporting the private sector is the surest way of keeping the rights of the economy on. That's the surest way of supporting a government or an administration by ensuring the population access. And it's also the best way of supporting a government to transmit its fiscal and monetary policies.
Mm-hmm. Now, 2022, tell us about that. It was a good year for you. Where did growth come from?
2022 will go in history as maybe one of the best years we have ever had. Maybe the best year we have experienced. And that was achieved on the background of a global health pandemic, and a very unique, and on an election year. Yet equity defied the challenges of a health pandemic, the health of political electioneering, the challenge of unstable microeconomic environment where interest rates are taken off, inflation, exchange rate and liquidity. But it's because the brand has strengthened as a trust brand. So in midst of shock, equity always become the place to go. The flight to safety happens to be equity, the safe, secure place for your money in uncertain times. So we always tend to crowd in. And that is how we saw over the last 2 years, culminating with 2022, the balance sheet of the bank doubling and propelling us to be the largest bank in East and Central Africa. Because of the volume, profitability also became a very good indicator of the health of the bank. But also we saw the quality of the loan book. While the banking industry had an NPL of 14, we found ourselves coming to 7.4. Again, reflecting on the quality. So it was superior performance in absolute profitability, in quality of their own book, and in terms of growth of balance sheet. That really ushered equity and positioned equity very well as we entered the most stormy macroeconomic environment of our lifetime, where we are experiencing a perfect storm of inflation, interest rate, exchange rate volatility, and liquidity insufficiency. So we entered that environment in a point of strength because of the way 2022 was.
Now, the elections are over. I'm moving on to discuss the macroeconomic environment. The talk out there is that the cost of living is very high. And I think, granted, we are all seeing it, you're all feeling it. How is the bank feeling it? Because I think you're in a better position to actually feel the heartbeat of the economy. How is the bank feeling, and what do you see going forward in terms of growth, or at least alleviation in the cost of living in the country?
The macroeconomic environment of Kenya is not different from the global macroeconomic environment. For the first time, we have seen the world experiencing macroeconomic turbulence simultaneously. Inflation in Kenya is 10%. Inflation in US and Europe is 10%. That's a beginning point. When you look at interest rates, the way in inflation is being managed, every country is increasing. And we are seeing the Fed rate, the Kenyan central bank rate, the European central bank rate, they're almost moving in the same direction. So that's the first thing to say, that it's not unique. But Kenya is caught into a global microeconomic environment. And as you have rightly said, it manifests itself heavily in terms of inflation. I think over the last 20 years, this is the first time we are seeing inflation breach into two-digit number. And that means that the purchasing power of Kenyans have lost by 10%. The value of the wealth Kenyans have been holding is losing value at 10%. That is a huge loss in one single year. And that's where we are feeling the pain. It is not just the inflation that is causing loss of value of what Kenyans own and the value of the stream of income they get, but also interest rates are on a peak. Looking at, for instance, the US dollar yields on 2024 bond is at 14%. If the US dollar euro bond sovereign risk is at the yield of 14, it tells you the interest rate should be anywhere above 18 in Kenya shillings. And that's so, again, Kenyans are being squeezed by the amount of interest they have to pay for their borrowing. But worse off is what Kenyans have to cough out to buy imported good. What they could have paid last year, 100 shillings, they are now paying 135 for the same item, for the same liter of petrol. And that is what is squeezing. So it is a perfect storm where everything that could have gone wrong from a macro environment has gone wrong. In my history and long working career, I've never seen that perfect storm where inflation, exchange rate, interest rate, and liquidity are all on the wrong side. And as a result, it will require a concerted global effort to resolve this, because it's not a Kenyan situation, it's a global situation. Looking at Kenya, I want to encourage Kenya. It's looking bad, but Kenya is one of the few countries that is registering an above 5% GDP growth rate, suggesting that the economy, the rails of the economy, the engines of the economy are still intact. It's the weed of microeconomic drivers that is brewing, and that's what we are feeling. But if that is tamed, then the economy will peak because the GDP growth rate suggests the engine is still intact.
How do you compare regionally? Yeah, in all these markets, you're in the region.
We are very lucky as a region. The East African region is the fastest growing region in the world. We're led by DRC, growing at 8.7 last year. We're followed by Rwanda, 6.2, and then Kenya, 5.3. We are at Uganda and Tanzania in the same range. That then positioned the region as the fastest growing region in the world. And that is where we could say there is huge opportunity for recovery. The good thing, that growth is embedded, particularly in the commodity production that the region is famous for. And then Kenya stands out as the most diversified economy in the region. So there is an economy that can bounce back much faster, it's Kenya. Two, Kenya had invested very heavily in infrastructure. So essentially, the ingredients of an economic comeback are in place.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the geopolitical environment. Russia invaded Ukraine about slightly over a year now, and that war has been blamed for almost everything, from the commodity prices. Basically, everything that is wrong in the world today is being blamed on that war. Now, from where you sit, this war is not ending. I think let's just start there. It's not ending. Yeah, may even escalate. I mean, if you're looking at the international media and what is being said all over the world, that war might escalate. Then there's also what is happening with the so-called BRICS countries, yeah, and trying to isolate the United States, the dollar, for that matter. And all these things come into play, or will come into play going forward. What does this portend for the future of the global economy and the geopolitics?
The current economic order of the world was established in 1945 after the Second World War. And that's when the UN was set, that's when the Bretton Woods institutions were set, that's when the NATO was set. We seem to be in another 1945 moment when the global economy is going through a reset. You are spot on. Russia-Ukraine war was a trigger. But before that, there was the COVID trigger. The COVID-19 demonstrated to the world that the global supply chains, which had broken, had put into question the issue and the economic theory of economies of scale and competitive advantage. When global supply chains were broken, those who had no manufacturing capability of vaccines could not get them. Those who had no manufacturing capability of PPEs could not get them because there was not transport and logistics anywhere in place. Then the war in Europe, Russia and Ukraine, taught us the absurdity of our dependence. The world depended on Russia and Ukraine for cereals, for fertilizers, for gas. And there is no region that has suffered like Europe, that has seen 150% increase in price of their energy, particularly gas from Russia. There is the world has suffered a food inflation of almost 45% because of dependence on cereals, particularly say wheat and sunflower from that region. I see, as you have rightly said, another two major issues. The issue of the tension between US and China on the basis of global positioning. And the second aspect, the geopolitics that goes with the Taiwan China saga, which looks like it's smelling like Russia-Ukraine saga. And those really then has exposed to the world in what would disrupt the existing order. And we have seen 1945 is when the US dollar became the global currency of trade. Today, the BRICS, which control 70% of the world population, have resolved to pull out. We have seen the Chinese yuan increase its facilitation of global trade from 2.5 to 4.5 within 1 year. And we have seen the commitment of Saudi, Russia to trade away from, and we have seen Brazil jumping in, we have seen South Africa. So again, that really suggests a new order is really emerging, including the trade currency for the world. We no longer can say that there is unanimity now, unanimous decision that is dollar. Now, half of the world has chosen, or 70% of the world population has chosen to trade with their own domestic currencies. So that then gives us a huge opportunity to ask, as the world resets, how will we see it as Africa? And I'm glad that from the geopolitics, Africa has not been sucked in. And so in the new reorganization, Africa can take a rightful position. One, saying, yeah, we have 60% of their neutralized Arab blood, so we can guarantee the world food security. We can diversify the sources of food around the world. We can fill the void that Russia and Ukraine had occupied. Gas and natural resources. We have a unique opportunity of telling the world, as you deal with these issues, let's help with the climate change. And Africa can lull its green minerals, the strategic natural resources of cobalt, lithium, manganese, that would help the diversification and transition from fossil wood, from fuel to electric cars, through the batteries, through electric cable. So that then gives Africa an opportunity to position itself on the table of a new global economic structure. And it can take a sizable position where it says, yeah, if there is a geopolitical tension between America and China, and America wants to reduce its dependence from the global manufacturing factory called China, maybe American companies can be encouraged and incentivized to relocate some of those factories in Africa. So there is a window of opportunity.
So you think it is actually okay for us to not take sides in this conflict?
It's not our war. It's not our geopolitical situation. So why would we drag ourselves into issues that we should ask ourselves, what is our opportunity? What should we be doing? And for me, we should be positioning ourselves to provide the world with a solution for energy transition, climate mitigation, alternative sources, solving the food insecurity, putting under our laddered agriculture, and taking advantage of the high agricultural commodity prices around the world. This is the time to provide ourselves as an alternative manufacturing hub and setting factories to manufacture, to process, and to add value into what we produce instead of selling. So also to acquire some independence and reduce dependence. I think the current global reorganization, global reset, provides Africa with a unique opportunity that it has never had. And the good thing, Africa had really sent a significant portion of its population to diaspora. It has acquired the skills, the capital, and the knowledge. And the global markets are looking for opportunities. And lastly, is Africa by 2050, according to World Bank, will have 25% of the world population. So essentially, it will be the consumer market. If it's the consumer market, it has raw material. Why, if the market is in Africa, if the raw material is in Africa, why send raw materials to Europe and send them back as finished goods to the market? Manufacture within the market where the raw material. So this is the essentially for Africa industrialization.
But is there a common front? Is there, for example, discussion going on amongst African bankers, or maybe for that matter, African leaders about this particular issue? Or are we just sitting and waiting for things to unravel? Because I think it would be good to have, for us to already begin having this discussion and not just getting caught up in the spoils of the war without actually having a strategy.
Africa has a strategy. It has started with saying we have 1.3 billion people, will be 2.5 billion. Let's trade among ourselves. And Africa has committed to the African Continental Free Trade Area. That would be a big driver of the transformation of Africa, because it all starts with the marketplace. The second one is African Union Agenda 2063. It is a roadmap of the transformation of the African continent by the African Union, by the African states themselves. And then there are companies like Equity Bank that have said, will provide leadership to the private sector and will develop the African Recovery and Resilience Plan, sell it to the private sector, seed it with the $6 billion, look for partnership of 16 development banks, who commits $24 billion. Here is $30 billion. Here is a plan to transform agriculture through productivity gains. The produce from the productivity gains in the mining and in agriculture. Let's start the manufacturing sector in Africa. Let's formalize our small and medium enterprises to populate the formal sector of agriculture, mining, and manufacturing, and let's invest in clean, sustainable energy. And then let's use technology to leapfrog and future-proof Africa. It's a 6-point African transformation plan that Equity has been able to persuade the UN to sign on, to persuade the Bretton Woods to sign on, persuade 16 banks to sign on, persuade the countries in which Equity operates on to have a national plan anchored on the African Recovery and Resilience Plan, and then sell it to the private sector to see the opportunity, to smell the coffee, and to fund that. And I'm optimistic that the boldness of Equity to put that front will then gravitate the private sector together. Because we have removed the bottleneck of financing.
So it will become of your Africa strategy in, your Africa plan over, let's say, the next 10 years. What do we expect to see?
We expect in 10 years that the African Recovery Plan will have deployed $30 billion in manufacturing sector in the African continent. It will have inspired a lot of private sector capital to deploy into the African continent. It will inspire the governments in the markets Equity operating to adopt friendly incentive programs for transformation of the economies. But more importantly, it has spurred the transformation of the micro and small medium enterprises. And they will have created 50 million additional jobs for the youth. And Africa will be not only have transformed agriculture, added through productivity gains, but will have become a manufacturing hub for the raw materials that it produces.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwangi. We all wish you the best. I think that the proof is in what Equity has done over the last 30 or so years. So we all wish you all the best, and I'm sure that your plans will come to fruition.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to have this conversation on thought leadership. focusing on the banking industry, innovation, growth, and diversification.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with Dr. James Mwangi, the Group Chief Executive Officer of Equity Group. This has been Thought Leaders Chat with Ochieng Oloo. Thank you very much for watching.